Bootstrap paradox. The bootstrap paradox explores a time travel scenario where an object or piece of information has no clear point of origin, creating a causal loop. Imagine a time traveler going back in time and handing Shakespeare a copy of Hamlet. Shakespeare then publishes it, and centuries later, the same copy ends up in the hands of the traveler. Where did the play actually originate? This paradox questions the nature of creation and authorship, blurring the lines between cause and effect. The name bootstrap comes from the phrase pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps, reflecting the paradox's self-originating nature. In physics, the bootstrap paradox is often discussed in relation to closed time-like curves, where time loops allow for effects to become their own causes. It challenges traditional concepts of linear time and causality, leading to philosophical debates about free will, determinism, and the fabric of reality. Real-world examples include fictional stories like Doctor Who, Tenet, and Dark, where objects, information, or people exist without ever being truly created. The paradox forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how we define origins. Can something exist without ever being made? Ultimately, the bootstrap paradox reveals the fragility of our understanding of time and causality, reminding us that some loops in logic might never fully unravel. Ship of Theseus paradox. The ship of Theseus paradox raises the question: if you replace every part of a ship over time, is it still the same ship? In the thought experiment, Theseus's ship is preserved in a museum, but over years, every wooden plank is swapped for a new one. Does its identity remain intact? The paradox deepens when the original planks are used to rebuild another identical ship. So now, which one is the real ship of Theseus? This paradox explores the nature of identity, continuity, and change. When does an object stop being what it was and become something new? Philosophers use this thought experiment to examine whether identity is based on physical substance or on continuity of form and function. The paradox has modern relevance in questions about personal identity. If every cell in your body changes over time, are you still you? It's also applied in tech and law. If you replace every component of a computer or car, do you still own the same item legally and functionally? Pop culture dives into this too. Marvel's WandaVision used it in a conversation between two visions, discussing memory and identity in a loop of logic. Ultimately, the ship of Theseus paradox challenges us to think beyond physical parts and ask, what really defines an identity? The matter or the meaning? Zeno's paradox challenges our understanding of motion and infinity, presenting a scenario where you can never reach your destination because there are an infinite number of steps to take. The most famous version is Achilles and the tortoise, where Achilles races a tortoise, but the tortoise gets a head start. Every time Achilles reaches the point where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved a bit further. Will Achilles ever catch up? Zeno argues that because there are an infinite number of positions to reach, motion is impossible, and thus Achilles can never overtake the tortoise. This paradox introduces the concept of infinity in a tangible way, raising questions about how we think about space and time. Modern mathematics resolves this paradox through the concept of limits and calculus, showing that even though there are infinite points, the total distance covered is finite. It's a brain bender. This paradox doesn't just mess with your head in math. It's like the ultimate test of our common sense of reality. Zeno's paradox is often used in discussions of time, physics, and how we understand the universe, showing us that infinite divisions don't always mean infinite effort. Ultimately, Zeno teaches us to question assumptions about the impossibility of certain things and reminds us that sometimes infinity isn't as infinite as it seems. Monty Hall paradox. The Monty Hall paradox is a probability puzzle based on a game show scenario that doesn't quite add up with your gut feeling. You're on a game show, and there are three doors. Behind one is a car, behind the other two are goats. You pick a door, and the host, Monty Hall, opens another door, revealing a goat. Monty then asks if you want to switch your choice or stick with your original pick. Most people think the odds are 50-50, but here's the kicker. Switching doors actually gives you a 2-3 chance of winning the car. This paradox messes with our intuition because we assume that after Monty reveals a goat, there are only two options left, so the odds should be even. But in reality, when you first pick a door, there's a 1/3 chance of getting the car and a 2/3 chance that the car is behind one of the other two doors. Monty's reveal doesn't change that initial probability. It just shifts the odds in your favor if you switch. The Monty Hall paradox is a classic example of how our brains don't always get probability right, and it's been used to teach people about conditional probability in a fun way. Philosophically, it speaks to how our minds process chance and reason, especially when it doesn't match our instincts. In the end, Monty Hall shows us how the unexpected can turn out to be the key to understanding a much larger picture. Sometimes the solution isn't obvious, and that's where the real paradox lies. Ship of Theseus replacing every single part of an object over time raises a deep question. Is it still the same thing? Imagine a ship whose planks are swapped one by one. At what point does it stop being the original ship? And if you reassemble all the old parts elsewhere, which one is the real deal now? This philosophical thought experiment challenges our ideas of identity, continuity, and what truly defines something's essence. It's not just boats. This applies to people too. Cells regenerate, habits change. So are you still the you from 10 years ago? The puzzle highlights the tension between physical composition and personal or historical identity. Some argue identity is tied to structure or function, Others say it's about memory, experience, or perception. In the end, the paradox forces us to examine whether identity is fixed or fluid, and whether it even matters. Grandfather paradox. Going back in time and messing with your own family tree can wreck the logic of existence itself. Say you travel to the past and prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. Then how were you ever born to travel back? This contradiction creates a timeline loop that breaks cause and effect, making the entire scenario collapse under its own logic. It's a classic dilemma in time travel stories, showing how interfering with the past can unravel the present. Some theories propose branching timelines or parallel universes to dodge the contradiction. Others say time might protect itself, preventing paradoxes by making certain actions impossible. Either way, it highlights how fragile our sense of temporal order really is. The paradox doesn't just mess with family, it shatters our basic ideas of consistency, consequence, and choice. Buridan's ass, a perfectly rational donkey, stuck between two identical piles of hay, starves because it can't decide which one to eat, with no logical reason to choose one over the other. It stays frozen in indecision, ultimately dying of hunger. This paradox mocks extreme rationality by showing how logic, without preference or randomness, leads to paralysis. It reveals a flaw in decision making where equal options cause a breakdown instead of resolution. Real-world applications appear in business, politics, and even daily life when overthinking prevents action. The dilemma emphasizes the role of instinct, emotion, or randomness in breaking deadlocks. It also raises the question, is total rationality always rational? Sometimes choosing something, even arbitrarily, is better than not choosing at all. Omnipotence paradox. An all-powerful being faces a tricky test. Can it create a rock so heavy that even it cannot lift it? Either answer, yes or no, seems to limit its power, creating a contradiction in the very definition of omnipotence. This challenge explores the boundaries of absolute power and whether limitless strength can logically exist. It pokes holes in theological and philosophical arguments about divine capability. Some argue that true power doesn't include the power to do the logically impossible, like making a square circle. Others say the paradox highlights flaws in human language, not divine nature. Still, it remains a provocative question. Is limitless power really possible, or just a conceptual illusion? Ultimately, it's less about gods and more about how we define and imagine extremes like infinity or perfection. Paradox of the arrow. Even when something is flying through the air, it can be seen as totally still, depending on how you look at time. At any single instant, an arrow in flight occupies just one space. If it's in one place, it's not moving, right? And since time is made of a series of these instants, the arrow is never actually in motion, just frozen frame by frame. This messes with how we understand motion, time, and continuity, just like its cousin, paradoxes from Zeno. It forces us to question whether motion is something continuous or an illusion created by rapid snapshots. Modern physics and calculus say motion is real, and this paradox is more of a flaw in logic than reality. Still, it's a mind trip that shows how tricky defining movement can be when you zoom in close enough. Turns out, even flying arrows aren't safe from philosophy's slow motion takedown. Predictions paradox. You're told you'll be surprised by a quiz next week. You overthink it. If you know it's coming, it can't be a surprise. So you wait. Bam! It's a surprise. This paradox mixes expectation and knowledge. Predicting a surprise makes it no longer a surprise, yet being surprised proves the prediction worked. It exposes how our own logic can betray us when dealing with uncertainty and future events. Philosophers use it to demonstrate how self-referential logic can loop back and bite us. The prediction paradox leaves us spinning, showing that overthinking the unknown can be the biggest trap of all. Mere addition paradox. You add a group of slightly happy people to an already happy population. Now the average happiness drops. Was that really a good idea? The paradox arises in population ethics, where adding more people who are barely worth living seems to make the world worse. But no one is worse off individually, and yet the total outcome feels morally unsettling. It questions how we evaluate the goodness of a world. Is it about total happiness, average happiness, or something else entirely? The mere addition paradox shows the awkward clash between quantity and quality in ethical decision-making. Sleeping Beauty paradox. Beauty is put to sleep. She's told she'll be awakened once if a coin lands heads, and twice if tails, but won't remember the first wake up. When she wakes up, what's the probability the coin landed heads? Some say path, others 1/3. Chaos ensues. This paradox challenges how we update beliefs based on limited information and memory manipulation. It's a favorite in philosophical probability debates, pitting intuition against Bayesian logic. The Sleeping Beauty paradox twists our sense of time, memory, and chance proving probability is never as simple as it seems. Paradox of fiction: people cry during sad movies, feel fear watching horror, and cheer for fictional heroes. But they also know none of it is real. How can emotions be genuinely triggered by things we know are fake? The paradox lies in the contradiction between emotional engagement and rational disbelief. If we know the characters aren't real, why do we care? It dives deep into the psychology of empathy and suspension of disbelief, revealing how our minds can simulate emotions by projecting real feelings onto imagined scenarios. Artists and storytellers use this to create powerful emotional experiences, even when logic tells us nothing is truly at stake. This paradox explores how fiction shapes our moral compass, empathy, and even social behaviors, showing that imaginary worlds can influence real-world values and decisions. Lottery paradox. In a lottery with 1 million tickets, it's reasonable to believe any one ticket won't win, but it's also certain that one ticket will win. How can we believe both things at the same time? The contradiction arises from logical probability. It's rational to doubt each individual outcome, yet irrational to doubt the collective certainty. It challenges our understanding of justification and belief, especially in large-scale systems where low probability events are guaranteed. This paradox has major implications in fields like law, where circumstantial evidence is treated probabilistically, and in AI, where predictions must handle contradictions. Ultimately, it reveals the fine line between logic and common sense, forcing us to question how we build rational beliefs in a world full of uncertainty. The Newcomb paradox. You're presented with 2 boxes, one transparent containing $1,000 and one opaque that might contain $1 million. But only if a superintelligent predictor has guessed you'll pick only the opaque box. Rationally, it seems smart to take both and guarantee at least $1,000. But if the predictor is always right, taking only the opaque box is the winning move. This paradox pits free will against determinism and logic against prediction. Can your choice change a decision that's already been made based on your future behavior? Game theorists and philosophers use it to explore decision-making under uncertainty, where the outcome is tied to your own anticipated behavior. It shows how belief in a perfect prediction can alter action, and that sometimes the best decision isn't the most logically greedy one, but the one that assumes trust in the system. The teletransportation paradox. Imagine a machine that scans every atom in your body, destroys you, and rebuilds you perfectly somewhere else. Is that you, or just a copy? This paradox questions the nature of identity and consciousness. If your memories and body are the same, does continuity matter? It draws from real-world debates in neuroscience and ethics, exploring whether you are your physical self, your consciousness, or the continuity of both. The thought experiment is unsettling. What if every time you use the machine, the real you dies, and a clone takes over thinking it's you? It forces us to examine what makes us us. Are we information? Are we matter? Or is identity something that can't be transferred, only experienced? The morality paradox, aka the trolley problem remix. Imagine this. A trolley is speeding toward 5 workers. You can pull a lever to divert it to another track, where it will kill 1 person instead. Simple math says save 5. But would you do it? Here's where the paradox kicks in. We often refuse to actively cause harm, even if inaction causes more harm overall. Emotion clashes with cold logic. This reveals a tension between utilitarianism, greatest good for the greatest number, and deontology, morality based on rules and duties. It forces us to ask, is killing 1 person worse than letting 5 die? And does intention matter more than outcome? The paradox gets more intense in modern AI ethics, especially for self-driving cars. Should a car sacrifice its passenger to save a group of pedestrians? The self-reference paradox. Consider the sentence, "This statement is false." If it's true, then it's false. But if it's false, then it's actually true. Boom, mind loop. This paradox isn't just a wordplay. It breaks the foundation of logic by destroying the possibility of assigning truth value. Found at the core of Gödel's incompleteness theorem, it proves that some truths in a system can't be proven within that system. It's like a snake eating its tail, an endless loop of contradiction that haunts both mathematics and philosophy. This paradox shows how language and logic can collapse under their own weight, creating unsolvable riddles from within. The mere addition paradox, aka Parfit's repugnant conclusion. Suppose we could add more people to the world, all with good lives, not perfect, but worth living. Is a bigger, mildly happy world better than a smaller, blissfully happy one? Logic says yes. More total happiness is better. But emotionally, a huge world of meh happiness feels worse than a smaller world full of joy. The paradox challenges the idea of total utilitarianism, the belief that the best outcome maximizes total happiness, no matter how it's distributed. It raises disturbing questions about future generations, population ethics, and what kind of world we should be trying to build. Basically, it forces us to ask, should we aim for maximum happiness or highest quality of happiness? The two envelopes paradox. You're given two envelopes, one with twice as much money as the other. You pick one. Should you switch? The math seems to say yes, always. If you have $50, the other might have $100 or $25. On average, switching seems profitable. But if every time switching seems better, that leads to infinite switching. The paradox lies in flawed expectation logic, assuming probability remains the same regardless of how much is revealed. It highlights the danger of infinite regress and how probability theory can get tangled when values depend on unknowns. It messes with decision theory, gambling logic, and how we evaluate risk versus reward. The Abilene Paradox. A group decides to do something none of them really want because each person falsely believes the others want it. Classic example. A family road trip where everyone hates the idea, but no one speaks up. It shows how groupthink and fear of disagreement can lead to choices that literally nobody supports. This isn't about logic. It's about communication breakdown, social pressure, and misreading intentions. The paradox reveals how people sacrifice their own preferences for the sake of harmony, ending in shared dissatisfaction. It's used in business, politics, and relationship psychology to expose how silent assumptions lead to collective failure. The paradox of originality. Every creator wants to be original, to make something truly unique. But to learn anything, we must study and absorb what came before us. Here's the twist. The more we learn, the more our original ideas are shaped by existing ones. So can anything we create ever be purely original? Or is every idea just a remix of past thoughts in disguise? This paradox haunts artists, writers, and inventors alike. It questions the very essence of creativity, suggesting that true originality may not be about creating from nothing, but about synthesizing the old into something that feels new. The relevance paradox. In our information overloaded world, we try to filter only what's relevant to us. But by applying filters, we risk missing the very thing that could be most valuable because it doesn't seem relevant yet. Think of search engines or social media. They show you what they think you'll like, trapping you in an echo chamber. This paradox reveals how relevance can become a cage where you're blind to new insights simply because they don't match your current interests. It's a dilemma of growth versus comfort, seeking knowledge while unintentionally shutting it out. The paradox of self-improvement. To become better, we first have to accept that we're not good enough. But constant self-criticism can lead to anxiety, burnout, or a sense of never being satisfied. So, how do we improve without hating ourselves? This paradox lies in the tension between self-love and self-discipline. If you're too content, you don't push yourself. If you're too hard on yourself, you break. It highlights a fragile psychological tightrope we walk every day, asking whether true growth is fueled by dissatisfaction or if the real victory is learning to grow from a place of peace. The privacy paradox. We say we care about privacy, yet we keep using apps, platforms, and devices that collect massive amounts of our personal data. People trade privacy for convenience and then panic when their data is exploited. This paradox reveals the inconsistency between our values and our actions. It also exposes a deeper question. In a digital world where everything leaves a trace, is privacy a right we can realistically expect, or just an illusion we choose to believe in? The responsibility paradox. When everyone is responsible, no one is. In group settings, tasks often go undone because each person assumes someone else will take care of it. This is known as the diffusion of responsibility. The paradox is that the more people there are to help, the less likely anyone is to help. It appears in emergencies, teamwork, politics, even family. It challenges our assumptions about collective power, reminding us that shared responsibility sometimes leads to shared inaction unless someone steps up. The liar paradox. This statement is false. Boom. If it's telling the truth, then it must be lying. But if it's lying, then it's actually telling the truth. This ancient brain breaker loops forever. It challenges the very foundation of logic, a statement that can't be true or false without canceling itself out. Philosophers like Epimenides dropped this back in ancient Greece, and even now, logicians are sweating, trying to fully resolve it. Truth becomes slippery when language turns on itself. The ship of Theseus. Imagine a ship where every single wooden plank is gradually replaced. Is it still the same ship? Now, suppose you take all the original parts and rebuild it somewhere else. Which one is the real ship of Theseus? This old-school paradox asks, what truly defines identity? The material, the structure, or the continuity? From people to objects, it messes with how we see change and sameness. And now it's even MCU canon, thanks to WandaVision. So yeah, it aged like wine. Achilles and the tortoise. Achilles challenges a tortoise to a race and gives it a head start. But by the time Achilles reaches where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved a bit further. And again, an infinite number of steps, So logically, Achilles never catches up. But in real life, he obviously does. This paradox from Zeno shows how dividing space and time into infinite parts messes with common sense. It's one of the earliest explorations of infinity, a slow burn with heavy implications. The Sorite's paradox. Take a heap of sand, remove one grain. It's still a heap, right? Keep removing one grain at a time. At what point does it stop being a heap? There's no clear boundary, yet clearly a single grain isn't a heap. This ancient paradox plays with vague concepts and gradual change. It attacks how we define categories and shows how fuzzy logic can lead to total breakdowns in meaning. The barber paradox. In a village, a barber shaves everyone who doesn't shave themselves. So, who shaves the barber? If he shaves himself, he's breaking the rule. If he doesn't shave himself, then he must shave himself. This paradox, later made famous by Bertrand Russell, is an early version of a set theory problem that wrecked mathematics for a while. It exposed contradictions in logical systems and forced the foundations of math to get a serious upgrade. The hooded man paradox. A man is told, "You will arrest the hooded man." Later, he arrests someone wearing a hood, not knowing it's actually his brother. He did arrest the hooded man, but didn't know it. So the paradox hits. Can you knowingly do something you don't know you're doing? This one messed with medieval logicians. It's like epistemology, study of knowledge, got drunk and tripped over itself. Knowing becomes weirder than just facts. It's tied to identity and perception. The Grelling-Nelson paradox. Let's talk adjectives. Some describe themselves, like short is a short word. Others don't, like long is not a long word. Now, here's the twist. Is the word heterological, meaning does not describe itself? Itself heterological? If yes, then it doesn't describe itself, which makes it heterological. But if it doesn't describe itself, then it does, which means it's not heterological. Boom, logic faceplant. This paradox slices language with language itself. The paradox of inquiry, Meno's paradox. From Socrates himself, if you know something, there's no need to learn it. If you don't know it, how would you recognize it to learn it in the first place? Either way, learning seems impossible. This paradox attacks the whole idea of discovery and education. So how do we ever gain knowledge if we either already have it or can't recognize it? Plato tried solving it with the theory of recollection, that the soul remembers truth from past lives. Deep stuff. The Diodorus-Kronos paradox. Old school logic chess incoming. Diodorus claimed, the impossible never happens. What did not happen in the past is impossible now. Therefore, only what's true and will always be true is possible. This crushes free will like a grape. If something didn't happen, it can't happen. Future already locked. Ancient determinism vibes. Time becomes a rigid, unchangeable path. Wanna rebel? Too late, bro. You already didn't. The heap of baldness. Eubulides remix. Eubulides dropped this savage twist. If a guy has a full head of hair, he's not bald. But remove one hair. Still not bald. Remove another. Still not bald? At what exact hair do we call him bald? This isn't just about roasting Baldy. It's a paradox of vague terms. Like, where does young end and old begin? It slaps us with the truth. Our categories are often made up and blurry. Ancient but relevant, especially to guys checking their hairline at 30. The Sorcerer's Apprentice paradox. An apprentice learns a magical spell to animate brooms and carry water, but he doesn't know how to stop them. Soon the brooms multiply endlessly, flooding the place. Here's the paradox. Partial knowledge gives the illusion of control until it spirals out. This ancient tale, later popularized by Goethe and Disney, reflects on tech, knowledge, and power. If you can start something but not stop it, did you really ever control it? The liar's successor paradox. Imagine someone says, the next statement is true. Then the next one says, the previous statement is false. Neither statement can be labeled true or false without contradiction. Unlike the classic liar paradox, which is self-referential, this one's inter-referential, a sneaky little loop between two statements. It turns language into a snake eating two tails at once. The ancients were cooking confusion with minimal ingredients. The goat-stubborn donkey paradox. Two animals are tied to opposite ends of a rope. One's a goat, one's a donkey. There's just enough slack for one to reach the water and the other to reach food. But neither budges, both waiting for the other to move first. So they starve. This is an OG version of game theory and mutual loss. It's the prisoner's dilemma, but with hooves. Ancient philosophers used this to argue about self-interest, cooperation, and dumb pride killing the bag. The arrow of action paradox, a variation of Zeno stuff, but less known. If every action can be broken into smaller and smaller steps, when does the actual movement begin? Let's say a warrior draws his sword. That involves thousands of mini-actions. So when did the attack actually happen? The ancients wondered. Is movement an illusion created by infinite stillness stacked together? It's motionless motion, a slice of metaphysical sushi, the Euthyphro dilemma, Poseidon tier paradox from Plato. Is something good because the gods command it, or do the gods command it because it's good? If the gods command it because it's good, then good exists independent of them. If it's good because the gods command it, then good is arbitrary. This wrecks divine morality systems. The ancients basically said, either God is not the source of morality, or morality is meaningless. Mic drop in a toga. The horn paradox. Cornutus horn paradox. Imagine someone telling you, what you haven't lost, you still have, but you haven't lost your horns. Therefore, you still have them. Wait, what? This is the horn paradox, an ancient logical trap attributed to the Stoic philosopher Eubulides, meant to trip people up using seemingly valid premises that lead to a ridiculous conclusion. At its core, the paradox plays on assumptions, language, and unexamined logic. The first premise sounds obvious and harmless. If you haven't lost something, then clearly you still have it. Fair, right? The second premise sneakily assumes that you had horns to begin with, which is obviously false for most people. But since we often don't question hidden premises, the logic seems to slide right into place, leading to the absurd conclusion that you have horns on your head. This paradox is more than just a funny ancient joke. It exposes how flawed our reasoning can be when we don't question assumptions. It operates on presupposition, where a statement smuggles in something unproven or false without us noticing. In this case, the line, "You haven't lost your horns," secretly assumes you had horns once, which is never addressed. Philosophers have used this kind of paradox to challenge the limits of syllogistic logic, the classic A plus B equals C system that dominated ancient and medieval thought. The horn paradox reveals that even airtight logic can produce nonsense if it's built on dodgy foundations. It's a reminder that how we reason is just as important as what we reason about. Interestingly, this paradox has evolved into a broader category of loaded questions or presupposition traps, like the classic, "Have you stopped cheating at cards?" Answering yes or no implies guilt either way. The horn paradox is its granddaddy, catching people off guard not with complex math or science, but with everyday language and faulty logic. In our age of misinformation and clickbait headlines, this paradox hits harder than ever. We're constantly fed conclusions based on assumptions we never got the chance to question. The horn paradox is a call to slow down and check the hidden baggage in our reasoning.